Hi, you're listening to the Most Stop Mo podcast. In this episode, stop motion animator Mayreni Seda. In part one of this two-part podcast, we begin with an unreleased interview from 2020, where David zooms to Guadalajara, Mexico to chat with stop motion animator Mayreni Seda. The two discuss her journey from a career as a graphic artist to becoming an accomplished animator, specializing in the subtle acting of her characters, from projects such as the Glorybots music video, Radiate, to the stop-motion short, See You Soon.
So welcome.
Thank you for the invitation. I was excited.
Well, I'm excited to have you. I got to get exposed to you and your work when I was doing a workshop at Tech Guadalajara. Fraser McLean introduced us because he holds an event in a little, it's kind of like a little cafe, right? What's the cafe? What's the cafe called? Do you know?
Cafe.
The what?
Rendezvous Cafe.
The Rendezvous Cafe. And Fraser McLean, if you don't know, he authored this wonderful book called Setting the Scene. He was a professor at Tech for some time, and while he was there, he would run these artist networking opportunities, or just kind of like inviting artists of all forms of life. And I got to meet Mayreni there and got to see some of her portfolio work. And she's an amazing stop motion artist, and she also is connected with other stop motion artists there. So my bigger ambition is definitely to get back down there as soon as all this COVID stuff is boxed away one way or another, and try to continue that community building between Mo Stop Mo and the artist community in Guadalajara. But so how's everything down south with the industry right now, stop motion and otherwise?
Actually, the industry is good. It's growing fast. Because of the pandemic, we had to stop. Of course, everything, all the productions had to stop for a while. But what we're seeing right now, at least the small studios, we have a lot of work right now. I mean, 2 months ago, we didn't know if we were still going to have a job the next month. But now, the thing is, there are so many restraints right now for live action that a lot of clients, at least in advertising, a lot of clients that were considering live action, or they would never have considered animation before, are starting to turn this direction to see what we're doing. So because we don't have that many restrictions, or at least digital animation is a lot easier to be able to get around working from afar, working through Zoom. Stop motion, of course, isn't that easy. So we have to be at the office, at least the people, the art department, the animators, we have to be there. But yeah, we're starting to get actually more projects right now.
So you are... So right now you're working, the studio, I saw that you're working for an advertising studio right now?
Yeah, it's called the Hobby Creative Studio. We do mostly advertising, sometimes music videos. Actually, just last Monday, there's this music video for a band called Glorybots. They're from Seattle. There's a video called Radiate for their latest single. So that's what we just cut out.
Yeah, I just saw that. That was pretty great.
Yeah, thanks. That was a lot of fun.
You worked on that directly? Yeah,
actually, I did a little bit of art direction. I at least all the set building, set designing, the stop motion part, because it's mixed stop motion with 3D. And I did half the animating. The other half was mostly my boss, Sam Mendes. He's a wonderful animator and sculptor.
Oh, okay.
And he directed the other part. Our other Sam Mendes, the Mexican one.
I was going to say there's going to be an IMDb competition for that title there.
Yeah. This is Mendes with a Z, except with an S.
Okay, good. Good to know. He's got to have that little thing that's going to make him different. That's all I need.
Right.
So you were working on that video during this whole lockdown period, or is this something that's just wrapping up that started before that?
It started a little bit before. As soon as government let us go back to the office, we started full time on that. So it was about 3 months production. We just finished it. We did hand it in about a month later because of COVID mostly. But yeah, we finished it just in time.
And what is the culture like in Guadalajara with all of this? I know that the borders were closed for the States for a little bit, but what is it like in terms of health and safety standards and working in in a stop motion space? Like I know right now, you know, everyone's working independently. One of the advantages of many animators, if you have like a bedroom, you could do your work. And a lot of my animators haven't really noticed a big difference during this lockdown. But I was wondering, when you're working on the music video and you're going to work over at the studio with a shared space, what is that like?
Well, mostly the thing is, it's not a very big studio like all stop motion studios. There isn't a lot of staff, a lot of crew, and just the stop motion department is like 3 people.
Okay.
So we don't have, it wasn't that hard to keep our distance, and we just try to, at least if everybody has to be working in the art department and the workshop, we lay down some ground rules. So everybody, if you have to go to the workshop, please wear a mask and wash your hands, and taking temperatures and everything. And of course, we try to monitor, make sure that everybody's taking precautions outside of work as well. I mean, I haven't been using public transportation. My friends that have cars have been carpooling, making us, doing us a favor of helping us out with that.
Oh, that's nice. Is it a distance from where you live?
No, I mean, by car, it's about 10 minutes away. So I don't have
Okay.
to commute that far.
Okay, that's good. So my experience, and maybe this is just a romantic idea, but it seems like there's a lot of great opportunities for stop motion in Guadalajara right now, outside of the buzz with Guillermo del Toro and this maybe film that's going to happen. I saw, like, we went to a stop motion studio of a colleague that you know. I didn't know how well you knew.
Ikuri?
Yeah.
Oh, Marco. Yeah, I knew him. We collaborate a lot. Since they do 3D printing, sometimes they make our puppets, or they're actually, Hikuri right now is starting to create a lot of series. They're creating web series, but they don't really have the means or the knowledge for producing the stop motion. So they're sort of coming up with the ideas and making the puppets, and we're producing them at Hobby.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. That's a cool collaboration then.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's a lot of opportunity there. I guess my question, just how I ask everyone else who does this, is how did you get started in stop motion? And then also, kind of in the same vein, why?
Why is a longer story.
I know that story.
I think my first experience with stop motion, actually, I remember this story the other day, that I think the first thing that I saw of stop motion in my life was my dad that started playing with my automobiles and his video camera. So he started just stopping and recording the camera and moving my toys around. So that was the first stop motion I ever saw, something that my dad did creatively for me.
Oh, that's cool.
He's a creative guy. He used to make up a lot of videos around the house just for fun. He's like another kid sometimes.
Okay, cool.
Then I remember the biggest impression, or first impression of stop motion, was when The Nightmare Before Christmas came out. And not just the movie, but which I got to see, in theaters and everything. But I think it was seeing the behind the scenes of the movie. I had a really strong impression of seeing that behind the scenes and seeing that it was adults playing with toys. Just this impression of seeing grown people making this film. And my first, realizing how it was made. And I guess from then I've been a little bit obsessed of the way things are made more than the final result. And stop motion is always a fascinating, process.
So then in like seeing that, then all of a sudden it's like did you think that you just wanted to do it everything? Or, it's probably too soon to say, I want to build, I want to animate. I don't know. But what did you feel like? So you saw the behind the scenes and
actually, yeah, I saw it. I was very impressed by stop motion since I was little, but it didn't really occur to me to pursue that path. Actually, it took me until I was finishing a college degree in something else, and I studied graphic design mostly, design and communication. I did have there were a few practices in animation during my college years. But I was still on the path for design, and I was a freelance designer for a long time. I was a webmaster for a while. I did mostly web design. Then I realized I hated design. So I kind of like, it's like I kept bumping into animation during my life, but I was kind of ignoring it until almost after college. I saw this a stop motion workshop. I took this course, which the course wasn't really very good, but that's when I realized I really did like it. So that's when I really started diving into it and almost taught myself, actually, through books, through watching behind the scenes.
So why do you think you were avoiding it, or why did you just not consider it? Was it just because you didn't think it was a profession, or you didn't think you would make money, or?
Yeah, I think it was more the part of not thinking there was a real profession. Like, it didn't really occur to me until much later that, okay, I might be able to take this seriously. It could actually be a job. It took me a long time to get to that conclusion. And you don't meet people, especially, I didn't know any other animators. I mean, stop motion animators, we're very rare. We get very excited when we meet each other.
Yeah, it's
I think
true.
that happened to you and me too.
Yeah. So when you started studying on your own for this, what time frame are we looking at? If you got influenced by Nightmare Before Christmas, that was in like the mid-90s.
Yeah.
So then you went and you got your degree, but then you said you started studying and trying to figure it out on your own. Like, what era is this?
This was, I guess, I started college in 2001.
Okay.
And I think another big influence in college was this one teacher that he taught a class in a history of animation. And we never did any practices, but he introduced me to a lot of techniques in old animations, like the history, the first animations that there ever were. And I was really impressed with them. So, and then this other class that was a stop motion workshop, I actually had to do a very short film. And I had to build a set in my house. This other girl, she did some puppets, and I animated them in my house. And I enjoyed it a lot. And I also think that for being the first time I ever animated something, it wasn't that bad. So I think just from the beginning, I kind of had a knack for it, which also comes in hand with just a parallel story. I've always been studying dance my whole life. Not professionally, but I think this being close to studying the body, studying body mechanics, body expression through theater, through dance, also made stop motion just come a little naturally to me.
That's interesting. You know, it's rare that I hear somebody say that their first film wasn't that bad.
Yeah, usually it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, especially if you hear it from the person themselves, you know, it's self-deprecating. So it must have been a pretty like fun experience, a positive experience for you.
Yeah, exactly. I say, okay, at least I can understand what's going on here. It wasn't so horrible.
Right. Huh. So you make your first film, and this is just this is for that class?
Yeah, it's just some schoolwork, but I enjoyed it, I guess.
And then what happens from there? Like when you shot it at home, like you did have that background of being able to like figure out animation because you were exposed by it from your dad. And then you kind of had probably some more like help through your instructor. Like where do you kind of put on the gas and kind of figure out, all right, I'm going to pursue this more?
I think it was like at the same time that I was discovering that I did not like graphic design. I did not want to pursue that, even though I was working that's what I was doing to pay the bills and everything. But I decided, you know what, I don't like this. And I was actually thinking I can either go to animation or actually audio engineering was something else that I was also very attracted to. I can't even remember how exactly I got to the conclusion that I said, okay, I think it's animation. But part of it was that I found this course because there was also almost no courses where you could study stop motion. There was this one school that would offer this course where you could produce a short film in 1 year. So they kind of led you through the whole process. And like I said, the school wasn't very good, but at least I got in touch with some really interesting people. I met my best friends in that course, and we're still working. They're in Mexico City. They do mostly prop building. They're starting to animate, and I went more through the path of animation.
Okay.
And there, it was also the people I met, and just really enjoying the process. Even though we ended up not liking that course, but I said, okay, I think I really want to pursue this on my own. So that's when I started pretty much self-teaching myself.
And you said you dove into a lot of books or whatever you could find, possibly like online or in libraries or wherever, to kind of teach yourself?
Yeah, I started ordering a lot of books on Amazon.
Okay.
Mm. It's really behind the scenes. They're starting to look at movies in a different way and looking at them frame by frame and that sort of thing. Just again, finding again that sort of fascination I found when I was a kid with a Nightmare. Just looking again at those behind the scenes of the movies and thinking, I love the part of having to solve problems all the time, because there's not one way of doing things in stop motion. I mean, every single project is completely different. So you have to, that problem solving part, I think, is really interesting.
Yeah, and you seem to be kind of a hands-on type of artist too. You seem to be like, you want to act it out. You want to be tactile. Are you like naturally talented when it comes to the animation part or the fabrication part, or like where does your heart lie, or do you not choose between your children?
Yeah. No, mostly it's animation. I've definitely just concentrated on developing my skills as the animator. I really also like puppets, a little bit of set building. I mean, it's very different working in film and working in advertising in a small studio. When you're in a really small project, either a short film or an advertising, you get to do everything. You have to be the art department. You have to be sometimes lighting and camera. Then you have to animate. Sometimes you even do a little bit of post-production. It's not very many people doing it. But if you're in a feature film, for example, which I had a little bit of chance to experiment on in Insomnia, which was a feature film. It was supposed to be the first stop-motion feature film in Mexico. We had to stop production. So hopefully it'll come back maybe next year. But anyway, it's different.
Which one is that one?
Insomnia, it's called.
Okay.
Directed by Luis Telles.
Okay.
In Guadalajara. Yeah, that's sort of why I ended up in Guadalajara, because I lived in Mexico City for a while. So
you actually moved for the purpose of that film?
Actually, yeah, it was actually a short film before that called Long Live the King, Viva el Rey, which it earned an award last year, the Ariel Award, which is kind of like the Mexican Oscars. So
is that the film with? Is that the film that's the chess film?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, yeah, like I got a chance
to see post-war on a chessboard.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
It was fun. So actually I came for that short film, and I guess I had a really good relationship with the director, and he liked my work. So he invited me to start Insomnia, which was already in pre-production. So I stayed on. I was supposed to come to Guadalajara for a few months, and I've been here for 3 years now.
Wow. And how's it different from Mexico City for you?
I like living now. I like Guadalajara a lot more. It's not just the thing that, I mean, just talking about animation and film, the industry is a lot stronger here than in Mexico City, even though Mexico City is a much larger city. But it's also quieter. I mean, it's a very interesting city with a lot of cultural movement, but a lot quieter than the big city. So I've adapted to Guadalajara.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been there, I think it was just the one time, and I loved, it seemed like there was a great thriving artistic community. So, and like all different types of artists, everywhere you turn, not only is there an artist community, but everyone's so good at what they do.
Yeah.
I'm like really shocked at how skilled the artists are there than I've seen in any community I've been to.
Yeah, and the schools are growing as well. Also, I think in animation, it's a lot stronger here, especially stop motion. I mean, there are studios all around the country, but most of them are here. Or not so many studios, but independent filmmakers are here.
Right. So you moved to Guadalajara for working on that feature, or the short, and then becoming the feature, or how did that work? Was it for the short?
It was
so you moved for the short
film.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was only supposed to be here for 3 or 4 months to finish the short, but then they invited me, so I just moved right away.
So has it been in those 3 years that you've become like such a stop motion artist, or were you also developing that while you were still in Mexico City?
Yeah, I mean, before Mexico City, Along with the King Here wasn't my first short film. There was another short film called Waves in the Sky. That was my first professional work. I mean, going back, first I took the stop motion course, then I started working on my own. And my group of friends, the ones I told you about, we started doing a little bit of advertising, just getting together, and we met this other girl who was working at an agency, and she was starting to pitch stop motion projects to her agency. So she started inviting us to work with her. And then from there, I gained a little bit of portfolio. I also worked in digital animation for a little while, like Flash animation and After Effects. And I learned a little bit of Maya. That's a good thing, because I also got to experiment, to dabble a little bit in all of the other techniques. But that's when I really decided that, okay, this is mine. Like you said, I'm really hands-on. I respect, I admire very much all the animation techniques, but I cannot sit still on a computer for 8 hours, 10 hours. I have to be on my feet. I have to be working with my hands.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a person, a part of Mo Statmo, who came from a similar background artistically as you did. His name's Zaldi, and he was from the whole web Flash animation contingent, and he went to school to further study computer animation, and he kind of had the same thing. He took a intro to animation course in San Francisco and was introduced to stop motion, and that was it for him. He started independently creating a double major for himself, and then he joined Mo Statmo, and he's an amazing animator. But it's kind of the same thing. It's like he loves different art forms, and sitting in front of a computer for such a long time, you know, it's like how, you have plenty of time to sit still when you're dead.
Right. Well, actually, there was this other course I was forgetting about. I did take this 2-week course at the University of California. They had this program called Summer Arts. I don't know if they still have it, but it was a very interesting program where for 2 weeks, you took an intensive course in whatever area you were interested in. They had art, they had painting, they had music, they had theater, they had animation, they had everything. And they offered this course, and it was called hybrid animation, where you were exposed to 3D, 2D, and stop motion. You had to combine two to make a short film. But the best thing was the teachers there were invited artists from Pixar, from Laika, from Warner Brothers. We had the director, and we had Rusty Mills, who was the director and creator of Pinky and the Brains, who is now passed away. Yeah. We also had Adam Burke, who also just passed away, the animator from Pixar. So I was fortunate enough to meet them. Another animator from Disney, Harvey. Now I forget his name. We had a lot of artists and a few animators from Laika as well. So I got, just being with those people that inspire you. I guess that's what I was missing before. Just being able to meet other artists and be inspired by them and know that it was possible to live from that. It hadn't happened to me until I could go to Cal State. So that was also a game changer, that course.
So that 2-week process, was that, what kind of animation were you doing during that? Or was it just kind of like an intensive learning situation?
Yeah, it was an intensive learning situation where sometimes it was just creating your own short film during those 2 weeks and experimenting. So we had the digital area and the stop motion area, and you had access to both to just sit down and create your work. And these other artists would just give you feedback and help you solve problems. And also during the week, every day, there were also conferences, interviews. So it was a lot of interacting with a lot of different artists and people already in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, you seem pretty motivated and kind of like really kind of dig in to figure out how to do what you wanted to do, how you could learn stop motion. What's it like now where you are in terms of teaching stop motion, or what kind of opportunities are there for people to come up through? If you were from Guadalajara, if you were wanting to learn stop motion, is there anything like a better type of institute that you would recommend, or is there, the community? I mean,
actually, right now there are There are university courses on animation, and they're mostly focused on digital animation, but they do have stop motion courses. Actually, I just started teaching at Tech University as well, just
Oh, you
about
did?
3 weeks ago. Yeah, I'm just giving a
Cool.
stop motion workshop.
That's so
Online,
fun.
of course, which is a big challenge.
What are you teaching?
Whatever you-
Are you teaching animation or fabrication or what? Just like an old catch-all type of course?
Yeah, it's sort of catch-all stop motion workshop. It's like 1 week we say we're gonna practice lip sync, so do this with clay. Another week they have to do pixelation, so just different exercises each week. And now
Okay.
we're starting another class that will be hybrid animation as well. So the students can choose what technique they want to use. Maybe they can use 2 or all 3. And we'll just be guiding them through the whole process from planning, from writing all the way down to post-production.
That's cool. Yeah, I sat in on their screenings in March. You obviously know McFly over there, right?
Yeah, I'm teaching with him actually.
Oh,
So
cool.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah, he's awesome. And what they do, which I think is really amazing there, is they do mixed media, but then they all each produce within a few months time span. I think in the beginning of the year to March, they're supposed to produce their own independent team short.
Right.
So you're helping gear up for that, huh?
Yeah, so they have to do the same thing from September to December. They have to make a whole film from writing to post.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a challenge, especially doing it starting online. We'll see what happens later.
Well, I guess that, it kind of brings me to the question, what do you think the future of stop motion is in the environment that it is now? So I'm trying to set up most stop mo as an entity, but I feel like there's certain things you just have to be hands-on.
Right. I don't think stop motion is going anywhere. It never has gone anywhere.
Right,
We're going to be here. We're just going to find the way. We're just going to figure out the way. What I do hear is happening in big productions, for example, in Portland, that you have Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio movie. Also, Henry Selick has his feature film in production right now. They've had to stop and they've had to invent new ways to be able to work safely. What I've heard is sometimes they give the animator their camera and everything, so only the animator goes on set, and the lighting and camera team are from afar telling them how to set up the camera. They can move everything online on Dragon Frame, and they'll guide the animator if they have to do anything on set. So it's a lot safer.
Very interesting. So there was an initial broadcast, and there was word that Guillermo del Toro was going to be bringing Pinocchio to Guadalajara for production. Has any of that happened?
It hasn't happened yet, and what I know is that it's only going to be a very small part of the movie. It's one sequence, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. That's what's going to be produced here.
Okay.
And with the 7 magnificent, or whatever they call them, the veteran directors here in Guadalajara.
Okay. So it's kind of like, because Guillermo is originally from Guadalajara, right? Isn't that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep,
so it's he's making that connection, wants to have at least a part of that, trying to bring a little bit more of that community to your neck of the woods, which, when I was there, I felt like it is prime for stop motion because I'm in the Bay Area. I live in Oakland and San Francisco, and it's just prohibitively expensive here for space. I'm in a shared studio space right now, and I'm working on establishing a dedicated space for most stop mo, but it's very hard to find space. Where I find like Guadalajara is not only like is space a little bit more maybe available because you just have more land there. It's like literally there's not the water kind of gets in the way of getting land, but it seems like there's so many people who have been getting into stop motion there as well. Like, were you trying to were you thinking like, oh man, I got to be a part of this thing, or?
I don't know. I think I just fell into it, really.
Yeah.
It was just, I wasn't even planning to come to Guadalajara. Like I said, I was doing my thing in Mexico City, just trying to get into the industry, just experimenting here and there. And I just got this. I was really lucky that Luis Telles, the director of the chessboard sword of Long Live the King. He found my work. Actually, he saw my work on my first short film, the Waves in the Sky film. And I think somebody recommended it. He was looking for an animator to finish his film because he had no time. He was already on Insomnia trying to start his feature film and dragging along his short film. So he was trying to get another animator to help him. And somebody told him, why don't you check out this short film? It was made in Mexico. It's not bad. Check it out. And he wrote to me. He said, would you be interested in coming to Guadalajara and finishing my film? Of course, I said yes. I dropped everything. I came here as soon as I could. And it just rolled out from there. And then it was Insomnia, and Insomnia had to stop production a year later. So that was 2 years ago. But I've always worked, and it's important for people that want to get into the industry. It's not just being good at your work. It's also important to get to know people, start to promote your work, talk about it, make connections. And I've always had that in my mind. So I was always working at meeting other animators, and that's also when I met Sam Mendes, this other animator. And that's when Insomnia stopped. He already knew my work. He needed new animators, so he invited me to Hobby. So it's just that I was lucky to stumble from one job to another.
So leaving Mexico City, that's where you said you're originally from?
No, actually, I'm from the States. I was born in Illinois, and my parents are from Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. But I've
lived
in
Illinois
most of my life. Chicago? No, not Chicago. Urbana.
Oh, I think we had this conversation because I'm from Chicago. So yeah, just 3 hours south. Okay.
Right.
So then what landed you in Mexico City? My
mom she wanted to leave the state. She didn't want me and my brother to grow up there, basically.
Well, I can understand if you were growing up in Urbana, that's kind of...
and I wasn't very long in Urbana. We were also in Fresno, California, State College, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
My parents are college professors, so I guess they got better jobs at one university or the other. But basically, mostly my mom said, Latinos in the U.S., we weren't having such a great experience. She said, okay, I want my kids to grow in Latin America. And we were she was first considering Puerto Rico, but she got a job offer in Monterrey first in Mexico. And from there, we moved to Mexico City. I guess I spent most of my life in Mexico City since I was 11 years old.
Okay. 11 years old. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. And what do your parents do?
They're both educational psychologists.
Ah, interesting.
Yep.
So when you wanted to move, were they kind of psychoanalyzing you and making sure you were doing the right thing?
Yeah, they're always analyzing me, pushing my buttons. Are you sure about this? But I think my mom especially was really excited, and I think she always wanted me to be an artist. She pushed me into music first, and then pushed me a little bit into dance. But now she's excited. She likes saying that, my daughter's a filmmaker and an animator.
Oh, that's
so she's
great.
happy about that. I have supportive parents. I know that's very rare.
So you said she was teaching, was it Tech Monterey where she was teaching? Or was it just a different school?
No, she was at UNAM mostly. I mean, I think she did teach in Tech. She taught in several universities.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like now you're teaching at Tech. So it's kind of following in the footsteps to a degree.
A little bit, yeah. Just for a little while. I mean, I do prefer productions, of course.
Of course, yeah, right. So was it a difficult move? Your parents were supportive? They were saying you should go and do this? Or were you just already like out the door, like I'm following this, just like you were following the art form the entire time? Or what was that like?
I didn't really ask. I just left.
Yeah.
Yeah, see you. Bye.
Okay. Got it. Well, that's really funny. So let me ask you, one of the things that is in industry-wide, and it's been voiced over the last year or so, is the role of women in animation. And what is it like culturally in the stop motion community where you have seen things? Like, what is it like for a woman in animation versus a man in terms of directing or producing, or just, culturally, in any type of studio environment for you?
Fortunately, I've been asked this a lot lately, but fortunately, I don't see a difference. I know this is not the experience for most people in the industry, especially in digital. I think it's a lot more competitive, but at least in stop motion in Mexico, I have not had any bad experiences. I have not had any advantages or disadvantages for being a woman. And I think part of it is that it's very, I mean, maybe just the number of people working. I know I've talked to animators in the US, and I think it's mostly dominated by men. So they don't feel included. And here, there are so many creators, directors, artists, animators are both men and women. But even so, I've been in crews where I've been the only woman and I've never felt vulnerable or anything. So fortunately, that has not been an issue ever.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. I mean, that you are also, you're being based off of your work when you first came over, like to finish a director's film. I do feel like, and maybe I'm just being, flowery, but it's like, I do feel like in stop motion, I have seen a lot more women, especially in the community that I've been in, that a lot more women have been in stop motion. And I'm not really sure if there's any correlation to that at all. It's just been my experience.
Yeah, I think it also happens here in Insomnia, this feature film, where that's the biggest project I've been on, and about 70% of the crew, we were women.
Yeah.
No problem there.
Okay. So the stuff that you have been animating, I've seen your like beautiful sets and props and everything. Are you, do you have a preference of how you animate, what you animate with? I notice you have animations in different styles.
Yeah, I think I've inclined more to naturalistic animation, something that looks very natural. I'm not so inclined to do cartoony animations, or maybe it's just that I've been pushed in that direction. That's the sort of work that people have asked me to do, and I think that's maybe what I've developed more. Actually, I think I'm not very good at snappy cartoony animation like robot chicken style.
Right.
It even intimidates me a little bit because I'm not that experienced at it. But it's normal. I guess each animator develops different skills, and I think my strongest skill is doing subtle movements. Action scenes are, like I said, they're also a little bit intimidating. Like I'm afraid of exaggerating the movement.
Oh.
So people mostly ask me to do the small, subtle movements, and people tend to like that part of my work a lot more.
So what's an example of some of your subtle movement?
I guess close-ups for dialogues and hair. I've become pretty good at animating hair and clothes and that sort of thing.
Uh-huh. And you were saying that your dance kind of informs your work. Tell me a little bit more about your experience with that.
Well, I've been doing dance, I guess, like 4-year-old, your mom throws you into ballet classes, and I liked that for a while. But then just maybe for the last 6 or 7 years, I started taking dance more seriously. I started getting into contemporary dance. I even have a few certifications in modern dance for contemporary and jazz. Which I've done just for fun. It's more than fun. It's more than a hobby, even though I've never considered going pro in dance, and I'm too old for that now anyway.
Oh, I start saying that.
But I guess when I started animating, I realized that, when you're so into dance technique, they show you a lot about the way the body moves, the way the body reacts, just mechanically. If you move this part of the body, what happens to the rest of the body? And there's a lot of that. So that just observing how the body moves has helped me a lot in making. I think that's why it also becomes stronger, or it becomes natural to me to do this more realistic style of animation.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting how you're saying kind of more natural, realistic style of animation. It's not like, too exaggerated, too cartoony, too surreal. No, I shouldn't say not too surreal, because the stuff I have seen is pretty surreal of yours,
right.
Especially the environments and the characters.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess all the projects I've been in are more dramas. I really haven't done anything for a series. I don't think I've done anything for kids. Not really.
Uh-huh.
Everything is
So that's
more adult oriented.
right.
It's rare to see multiple people.
Yeah. So I'm in a shared space, so there's some people
Yeah.
having a conversation. I hope that's not a
Don't
problem.
worry.
Yeah, if you were going to say, like, going forward, do you have you've worked on other people's films. What about your own ideas and story? Do you feel like you are a storyteller, that you have stories that you would like to tell?
That's another thing. I always liked writing when I was little. I kind of abandoned that for a while. So I do think that I would like to direct someday, but I don't feel confident yet in my abilities. I mean, right now I'm more focused on learning a little bit more about all the processes, thinking in the long term that I do want to direct. I don't know about writing. I would like to write, but I'm not confident in my writing skills yet. So maybe I could start directing something that someone else wrote.
Yeah. Well, you guys keep working.
Well, it's interesting to hear how, like, different people are coming from different backgrounds, and you're definitely hands-on, and you're definitely good at subtlety and movement. And it's like I feel like, people ask, especially if they're not familiar with stop motion, they're like, well, what exactly is that? And I'm like, just imagine virtually every art form that's ever existed in one medium.
Right.
and it seems like you're able to incorporate any of the experiences that you've had thus far and able to apply it to what you've done.
I know. That's the most beautiful part, I think. And especially maybe the art department is where you see more of these different backgrounds coming together.
Right. So you had mentioned Nightmare Before Christmas. That was one of the things that first got you into pursuing it, the behind the scenes film.
Right.
What other things would you say, if you're going to tell aspiring stop motion artists, say, oh, you should check out this film, or you should check out this film, or maybe if you just had some of your favorites that you wanted to share?
My favorites would definitely be, another studio that of course influenced me and really stuck to me was Aardman. The first Wallace and Gromit films I completely loved, fell in love with, just the characters as well as the making of and the technique and everything. And I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson. I was already a big fan of Wes Anderson before Fantastic Mr. Fox came out. And it was also my favorite children's story when I was a kid. So I went crazy when that movie came out. And I think it's a beautiful piece of animation.
Yeah,
so
that's the type of film I could watch. All those films I could watch over and over and over again.
Yeah. What I really like and respect about Wes Anderson is how everything is stop motion. Even if there are these great, wonderful special effects, everything is solved on camera practically. So, and I'm not saying that I don't like mixed media. I have a lot more respect lately for mixing techniques. But yeah, I always have this great admiration for people that want to solve everything in camera practically.
Right.
And I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, and well, you coming from the background of graphic design and digital and having a little bit of Maya experience, I mean, it can inform your animation, but I've often, said to students, fix it and post is for people who have time and money.
Right.
Most students have neither. But it's also, there's definitely like different schools of stop motion in terms of it should be a purist thing like Wes Anderson style, or, Leica, which uses several different techniques, almost using stop motion as a template for overlay for CG and stuff like that. So it's always interesting to hear different people's perspectives.
Yeah, and I really like still trying to be a little bit purist. I am a little bit of a purist. Actually, if the music video I was telling you about, Radiate, that just came out last Monday, if you check it, most of it is stop motion with backgrounds in 3D, but most of it we did not do in green screen. We projected the 3D animation on the wall. So what you see on camera is how we did it.
So you're advancing frame by frame.
Yeah.
You advance. Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had another computer with the projector. One computer with the projector, the other one with the dragon frame photographing the characters. So it was managing everything at the same time. But it was something new, something that we hadn't done before. So that was a lot of fun, doing something else and doing it. It has another effect having the projection right there, because even though it doesn't have as much definition as if you did it on chroma key and then actually inserted the image the way it's supposed to look, it looks a little washed out because it's projected on the screen, but it looks much more integrated because the characters have that reflection of the background on themselves and the props and everything. So it still looks better than if we'd done everything on green screen. So that was exciting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how much that affected your lighting and whatnot, but that video definitely has stylized lighting too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a challenge. I mean, the photographer was crying half the time, but it was his idea anyway.
Uh-huh. That's really interesting. Yeah, because if you go back to old black and white films where they would actually do that same thing, but for live action, and they just had the projection in the background. It always looked a little bit, I mean, the size was a little off. Yeah.
It looked washed out, but I mean, exactly. We tried to go back to that first original technique, which now they have, what's it called? And now they're doing these rooms with LED projections.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of it.
I'm not sure the name of like right now either. It's like, there's like these 4K type of backgrounds that you could just, lighting.
What they did on Mandalorian.
Yeah, right.
So it was the cheap version of that.
Well, that's cool. It kind of informs going forward. Maybe interesting, like maybe you could even impart that into some students depending on the resources or whatnot.
Yeah, right. And tech has the money for it. So maybe they will do that.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it seems like that place is crazy. It's like total blown out university.
Yeah. But going back to what you said about studying this, I mean, yes, now there are university courses, but still it's just starting out. A lot of people that are teaching animation don't have a lot of experience in the media, in the industry. So still I'm very glad that the course now exists, but it's still very green. So I would still say it's still very valid to go through your own path and study on your own. And even if you're in a university syllabus, you should still study on your own and make sure that you hone your craft. Take it seriously. I mean, it's something that has to be developed. It's an ability.
Well, it seems like there is, I don't know if this is common with you, but sometimes people feel like, oh, I got my art degree. Now I'm going to go get a job in that field.
Oh, that happens a lot. They think they have a degree in animation, they're going to get a job. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Most people do not care if you have a degree or not. They want to see you're real. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in the years that I've been working, I've never shown anyone my degree. No one's ever asked for my degree. Yeah.
Neither. I've only had to get to show my degree now that I started teaching at Tech, but before that, I never.
Yeah. So then in terms of advice, then sticking with it, any other pieces of advice that you'd offer in terms of putting yourself out there? I know you're present out there in social media, your website and stuff like that.
Yeah, I try to keep present and just approaching people that are in the industry. I mean, we're not that scary. A lot of people don't approach us because they think, I don't know, I guess they're shy. A lot of artists are very shy. I've met some people that are doing amazing things. There's this new generation of directors and creators that are coming behind the older generation, the Seven Magnificent, but they're not showing their work because they're shy. They don't know how to approach the industry, but they're doing amazing, wonderful stuff.
Yeah, some of the best artists I know are not doing anything remotely related to their art field just because, they're introverted. They are not social. But
that happens a lot.
Well, in an age of social media, it's kind of and even in an age of COVID, it's a way to get yourself out there without getting yourself out there, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. But now I've been showing more of my work on social media, and more people have been approaching me, like asking me, how do I get into the industry? And you always want to help them. I always think like I was in their position not too long ago. So I try to be very empathetic about that.
So you had mentioned Wes Anderson films in general, some of your favorite films. What are some maybe just in general films outside of stop motion that you feel like you would recommend for any type of, I'm a big fan of cinematography and lighting. I don't know if you have that same type of thing, but do you have any other films that you would recommend or?
Just general films, like live action, like Fight Club, I guess is one of my favorite films ever.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I love everything about it. The script. I mean, first of all, I'm a big fan of good writing. That has to be the most important thing for any type of film. Please write good scripts first before you go into anything else.
Yeah.
And that's one of those movies that I've seen it maybe 10, 20 times, and each time I find something different to it. And it is
Yeah.
so complicated. And just the theme and everything just clicks with me. I really like dystopian stories. So I love V for Vendetta. I like the Hunger Games, that sort of thing.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned story, because I feel like some of the obstacles that stop motion features have had in terms of getting recognition or traction has been story. Even when Nightmare came out, it did okay. It didn't do so great. We have seen a couple of nominations from Leica Studios, but I think historically they've also had story issues.
Yeah, I don't like Leica's stories very much.
I think it's the one thing and I'm very much a story person. I'm always about story and developing story, and that's just my thing. I study. I'm really passionate about. What did you think? I'm going to put you on the spot here. What did you think of Missing Link, the one that was nominated for an Oscar?
Yeah, I did not like it. I thought it was very boring.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I found it very boring and very predictable. So it's a little frustrating that Leica has all these resources. And yes, technically, I don't think that anybody is doing what they're doing. So they are on the edge technically of what is happening in technology development. I think a lot of is coming from Leica. But no, I do not like their scripts. And it's not even, it's like it's gotten worse. I did like Coraline. I did like the story. I liked Kubo a little bit. But I think they made a world that was too big for the story they created. But yeah, I mean, I admire them technically very much, but I'm not a fan of their stories. And Missing Link for me was the worst one, honestly.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because
you like it?
You know, I could see what they were trying to do. They were actually trying to make their world simpler to tell the story, but I felt like in doing so, they did sacrifice us caring about the characters.
Right. And they were good characters, especially her. I can't remember her name. I mean, finally we have a strong female character. That was interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, the very interesting thing too with Guillermo del Toro is I feel like he's got it's like his stories are probably as complex but well told.
Right.
You know, like something like Pan's Labyrinth, which I love.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's also dystopian, so I could see maybe you would like that one too.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, but like I think when it comes to Leica, I think probably their best told story, in my opinion, outside of Coraline, I felt like Paranorman was probably a pretty well told story.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
But yeah, similarly, like a lot of people will talk about Kubo, and I also say this about, I mean, a lot of people a lot of studios that make good successful films, like they have story issues too. People often say Up is one of their favorite films. And I was just like, you know, Up is a good short film. Like my favorite part of Up is the silent film of the couple.
Yeah, the montage at the beginning, right?
Yeah, and then everything else is just a bunch of stuff.
I agree. I think you're the first person I've heard say that Up isn't that great.
I mean, I always tell people it's the best short film I've ever seen. It's just an hour. It's just like an hour too long.
I agree completely.
So I think that's about it. What do you have anything else you would like to offer in terms of advice, perspective, anything else, especially in now this lockdown? What would you like to say to the people, the 5 people you may reach with this podcast?
Right. Maybe just really developing your abilities if you're interested in this. That's really the most important part. And it's not, a lot of people are afraid of the limitations of being at home, and not just because of COVID, just not knowing people or not having equipment or not having materials. Stop motion can be so creative, and seriously, every project is completely different. And I've had to come up with a few animations at home with books or even with natural lighting, with that sort of thing. Being a good animator has less to do with what's available to you and more with just being creative with the materials you have around you and really working hard to develop the principles of animation, to really understand them. And you can practice that with anything, with Play-Doh, with whatever you have at hand. So just start practicing. And now there are so many apps there are a lot of free stop motion apps that you can download and use your own camera if you don't have a professional camera. So It's a lot easier. I mean, that's a good thing about the development of technology right now, that even though stop motion is so hands-on and we still do everything by hand, we still benefit from a lot of the technological advances. And that's one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when you were in school, when I was in school before you, but there was no social media to speak of to do this. There was no apps. It was all film that we would shoot and send away and get back 2 weeks later. And if you left the shutter closed or left the gate closed, it's like, oh, I just shot like 5 minutes of black.
Yeah.
Which has happened to me.
Yeah. And the other thing is just get together with people and talk to people in the industry. Because maybe that's the first thing maybe that's why it took me so long to get into the industry, because I didn't know people to even inspire me to know that it could be possible. And now there are a lot more of us out there, and we're a lot more accessible with social media. So just find people and start making projects.
Do you feel like there is anything in stop motion that you feel like people, like you would say, I would like to see more of these type of people in stop motion, whether it's armaturist or, puppeteer, that kind of set design? Like, what is your thought there?
Definitely armaturists and riggers. We need that in Mexico. Maybe there are 2-3 people making armatures and still not very good. I mean, it's a part of the industry that is only starting to be developed here. But most of it, something at professional level, we have to get it abroad, because still there's nobody who can do high quality armatures and rigs. So please, we need more riggers.
Send more riggers. Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks again for joining for this. Had a really good time talking to you.
Me too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, very, very excited about this. And we'll be looking for, hopefully, Insomnia to pick up production.
Yay.
Again soon. Yeah, definitely keep us posted on what's happening with that, and stay in touch. Then say hi to McFly and Dorian and all those people at Tech. I don't know if you talk to them or...
Yeah, sometimes. Oh, you should follow this other project called See You Soon. It's another short film I just started production in. It's
okay.
The director is actually my roommate. We worked together at Insomnia. And her grandfather survived the Holocaust. He was Polish Jew. And it's a little bit about him being released from the concentration camp and getting in touch with his sister. They're the only survivor, and through letters. So it's not so much a sob story about what happened. It's really about reconnecting with family and rebuilding your life after tragedy. And it's a beautiful project. So check that out. It's on Facebook and Instagram. See you soon.
Okay, I'll definitely share that. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll hopefully hear some new exciting things coming our way from you and from Guadalajara in general. So thanks.
Yeah, you too. Keep me posted.
All right.
Most Stop Mo is dedicated to building community around the first form of animation ever put to film, stop motion. Find us online at mostopmo.com, on Instagram, and on Facebook. Hosted by David Rocco Ficini. Podcast theme by Richard Beethan III. And edited by me, Edwin R. Ruiz.